And it's one of these things where we see this idea of oppression and people's general attitudes towards "I am a victim" that we see in places like I've been lucky enough to travel around Australia and go to different country towns and all the cities, and you do not see that in country towns. You do not see that in places where people have to listen. I got to work. I need to work. I need to do things. I need to do manual labor. Where that, the ratio between working in an office building to working outside, busting your ass every day is quite high. When you go to the cities and you see these people, particularly in Melbourne, and I'm not sure how familiar you are with Australia, but in
I am
Melbourne,
very familiar. Before you go on, I spent 7 weeks in Australia and New Zealand in 2001. 5 of those 7 weeks were spent traveling through many of the major cities of Australia. So I
right?
know Melbourne very well, actually, yes.
And Melbourne is probably my favorite part of the world so far. I've only been to 8 or 9 different countries, but I love Melbourne. Unfortunately, it is full of victims. They have protests every single week about everything that you can name. And it's just a strange place to be. I wonder, like, particularly at the moment with the whole racism and the Black Lives Matter movement, do you think that race has, this is just something that I was pondering the other day driving home. Do you think race maybe has changed? Back in, the general sense of the word race is where your people are from. But now when every country is multicultural, or at least in the West, wouldn't your race then be the country you are born in? Like I am Australian, or someone is American, and that becomes their race. That becomes the people they are attached to. Because I guess in my mind, my uneducated mind, race is something that is based on, okay, we are on the shores of England and another race is coming to take whatever. Back in the day, we're talking about Vikings, we're talking about traders. Do you think race maybe has changed a little bit and people are grabbing onto something that is perhaps past?
Well, I mean, off the top of my head, the first thing that I would say is probably because of our ability to have lesser delineation between us versus them, as say compared to 100 years ago. I think you have, as you said, many more multiracial societies, but not in the sense that we coexist, but in that we intermingle in our reproduction, right? I mean, we mate with one another, right? So you take a country like Israel or a country like Brazil, two of the countries that have some of the most beautiful people, physically. And I think one of the reasons why they have some of the most beautiful people is precisely because they are a true reproductive melting pot, right? You have people, so for example, in Israel, you have the Mizrahi Jews, so Jews like me, Arabic Jews. You have the Ashkenazi Jews that came from Europe to settle in Israel when Israel was founded. You have the Ethiopian Jews that left Ethiopia. So these are black Jews. You have Russian Jews. So you have a real melting pot so that you end up with these truly beautiful mixes of people. Same exact thing has happened in Brazil, as I said, where you have some. I remember when I traveled with my brother back in 1992, we had gone to the Rio Carnival, and we were walking at the time at the beach in Rio. And I see a beautiful woman on the beach, and I turn to my brother and I say, that might be the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. About 5 meters later, I say, no, wait, scratch that. I think this is now the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. And as we were walking, I probably changed my opinion about 100 times, because every 3 meters, there was now the most beautiful woman. And I think it comes from this intermingling, this melting pot of races. I think my bigger question would be, why do we care about race so much? I mean, I always tell people, to me, it seems so banal what I'm about to say, but apparently it bears repeating. Why not judge people by the totality of their personhood as individuals? So I judge Isaac based on the total merits and flaws that constitute the personhood of Isaac. Very, very low on the list, maybe not even on the list, is whether he is white or indigenous or black. I don't care. I don't care about your, and I don't say this to sound liberal or cool. I genuinely couldn't give a damn. So I hate the fact that the place that I escaped from, Lebanon, which was defined by identity politics, is exactly where we've returned to. And I've made the prediction, by the way, Isaac. I said for many years now, that if the West doesn't get its act together, we will have Lebanon on every street corner in the West, whether it be in 5 years, in 10 years, in 50 years, it's coming. Well, we already are starting to see some of those fissures. So I'm not saying that tomorrow we're all going to butcher each other, but if you constantly create a narrative of us versus them, look, humans are a coalitional species. We have the tribal mindset. It's not difficult to get me riled up about me, the blue team, versus you, the red team. What's beautiful about Western liberal democracies is that we found a way to break through that, and now we're reverting to all this bullshit. So I don't want to talk about race. I want to talk about your individual merits and flaws.